Hello everyone and welcome to the ScreenSkills Select RTS Scotland Industry Insight session on sound department roles in TV. My name is Victoria Tracey. I'm Accreditation Programme Manager at ScreenSkills. Today we're going to be delving into the TV sound department with Scottish-based industry practitioners at different stages in their careers, discussing their current roles, whether as a sound supervisor, sound recordist, sound mixer or sound assistant. Please note that we're recording this session. There's going to be a Q&A towards the end of the session, so please submit any questions you have via the Q&A feature. It would be helpful if you could mention who the question is for when submitting these. The questions we put to the panel during the last 15 minutes of the session. ScreenSkills is the national skills body for the screen industries. We provide targeted support to retain and build a skilled and inclusive workforce, critical to the screen industry's global success. We work across the UK to ensure that film, TV, visual effects, animation and games have the skills and talent they need. We identify skills gaps and shortages across the screen industries. We support and quality mark education and training and offer professional development opportunities in screen. I manage the ScreenSkills Select endorsement scheme, which endorses and enhances screen courses that develop industry-ready students. By identifying the UK's most industry-focused courses, we enable employers to recruit the best talent. The Royal Television Society, RTS for Scotland, is an educational charity promoting the art, science and craft of television and schedule informative events all year round on a host of different topics, from the annual Scotland Awards and Student Awards to the prestigious Campbell Swinton Lectures, plus other events relevant to Scotland's television industry, featuring Scottish production teams and programmes, or tackling issues impacting television production and broadcast in Scotland. So let me hand you over to James Wilson, who is Curriculum Head, Broadcasting at City of Glasgow College. We also endorse them the HNCD in Creative Industries TV course. James will be facilitating this session and he's going to introduce you to each of our 4 industry speakers, and I hope you really enjoy the session.
Thank you very much, Victoria, and thank you to everybody who's joined this afternoon's session. I'm very pleased to be facilitating this session, and I'm delighted that we're joined by 4 such experienced and knowledgeable guests. Here at City of Glasgow College, we put a lot of effort into teaching sound production and sound post-production. I'd like to acknowledge the work of my colleague George Nielsen, who worked here for many years, and without him we wouldn't have built up the expertise of production base that we enjoy today. I've had the pleasure of working with some of the people on today's panel, and I know that everybody in today's session has come to listen to them, not me, so I'm going to stop talking as quickly as I possibly can and ask each of our contributors to introduce themselves and say just a very little to get the conversation going. I'd be grateful, please, if you could tell us, introduce yourself with your name, your current job role, and whether you're working freelance or for a particular company. And could I start, please, with Graham?
Hi there, I'm Graham McCormick. I'm a production sound mixer based in Glasgow, and I am freelance.
Thank you very much, Graham. And Heather?
I'm Heather Andrews, and I've just gone from full-time to freelance again, and I work across the board actually, but I'm predominantly a dubbing mixer and sound designer in drama and film and sort of high-end TV as well.
Thank you very much. Hayley and Jim are joining us from the Kelvin Hall production base, the studio works in Glasgow. Hayley, would you like to introduce yourself first, please?
Yeah, I'm Hayley Pollock. I'm a sound assistant. I work freelance and I'm also based in Glasgow.
Thank you. And Jim?
My name's Jim Hunter and I'm a television sound supervisor, and I was staff at BBC until last year when I took the leap and became freelance.
Okay, so in about 25 minutes, half an hour, there'll be an opportunity for folk to ask questions, but I'd like to ask the first few questions, starting with Graham. Would you be kind enough to describe the different roles in a TV department?
So from a drama point of view, like not what each of the roles do within a department when I'm working, that sort of vibe.
Yes, please. So an idea,
So,
I think. On you go,
go
Graham,
ahead.
sorry.
No, go ahead.
I think we have a good fortune to have a range of sound specialists here today. Graham, from a drama perspective, Jim and Hayley are both coming to us from a big studio facility and have got experience in that kind of work. But for Graham to begin, could you tell us about the roles in a TV sound department within a drama context?
Sure. So within a sound department for drama, you would usually the core roles are myself as production sound mixer, and then there's the first assistant sound, who would be traditionally known, or they'd be traditionally known as a boom operator. Then we have the second assistant sound and trainee. On some bigger feature films, you might have a third assistant sound as well, and then a trainee. But for television drama, generally it's production sound mixer, first assistant sound, second assistant sound, and then trainee. My role as the production sound mixer is obviously at the acquisition side of sound and ensuring that we get the clean dialogue or clean sound effects for use in post-production. And yeah, that's basically it, I guess. And interfacing with other departments and getting the best sound possible. The first assistant sound generally operates the boom microphones and places any hidden microphones or plant mics around sets. And the second assistant sound will help out the first assistant sound, but is also tasked with putting personal mics on cast. Quite often, sometimes if you're in a bigger job where you get a lot of cast, you might have two assistant sounds, two second assistant sounds doing mic placement on cast. And then they'll also help the boom operator set up equipment for scenes. The trainee role is to be there to help to learn from the second assistant, the first assistant, and myself. But also, you get tasked with jobs like dealing with battery charging, putting batteries into, getting batteries ready for radio mics, handing out headphone packs, IEMs in the morning, and laying carpets when we need carpets laid, and just lots of jobs like that. And then as you go on, you get to do things such as help the second assistant do radio mics on cast, and some as you get towards the end of your traineeship, you'll start getting some boom operation experience as well. And that's kind of what everyone does. Anything else you want to hear?
That's a really full description. I know you worked in Shetland. How many people were in the sound department in that particular location?
So in Shetland, that was myself, first assistant, second assistant, and then the trainee. And just like Shetland, I would say it's fairly typical of kind of high-end TV dramas where you may have high cast counts on specific days, but generally you wouldn't have more than 5 or 6, and that's for that size of department. That's a good number you can deal with. When you start getting up into 8, 14, that sort of higher numbers is when you might require another second assistant to be doing radio mics, and sometimes actually another first assistant to operate. The second assistant quite often operates the second boom as well. On some jobs, we'll go up to 3 booms as well as all the radio mics. So you may get in extra people to do that, so extra first assistants or extra second assistants. But Shetland's a fairly typical job where you would just use the standard department.
Thank you very much. And maybe coming to Heather next, who's also experienced in that kind of drama world. Could you describe perhaps a typical day, if there is such a thing, on a drama production? Is that a really stupid question?
Do you mean as in, it all depends what role you're doing. So if it's drama, there's obviously more money. I would say that all programming, depending on how many people are on a team, depends on how much budget there is. So for certain dramas, if they're, say for something a little bit less, like I did something called Dog Days last year, there was only, I was mixing and sound designing that myself, which was a whole series for BBC Scotland. and I had assistance of one editor to help me a bit with the dialogue. So you have something like that, for instance. Whereas if it's a bigger drama for Sky Atlantic or Netflix or something, sometimes you can have multiple sound editors in each department as well as dubbing mixers. So it all just depends on the budget. As Graham said as well, it's quite complicated in that say in a dubbing post-production facility, you tend to have sort of dubbing assistants who will generally be people who are just starting out in the industry. So that's the sort of role that you can expect to go into right at the beginning. I think that's one thing I must stress to people. You're not going to just jump into a job up at the top straight away. It takes quite a while to sort of build your experience that way. And that doesn't matter if you've been at university or college, you basically really need to be in the place working on a project there and then to get a feel of how everything works. With that role, you would be the person who would be bringing in all of the rushes. So from the sound mixer, you would get all the files and you would be compiling all of those files together with the picture. And they would sort of be in a kind of media hub where you would have sort of assistant editors who maybe do both picture and sound. If you're doing sound, then you would be trying to create what's called an AAF, where it has all of the content there, along with all the access to the rushes. So there'll be different takes of audio for different lines. And you would be sort of track-laying that out, setting that out for the next step for it to go to different editors. So that would be dialogue editor, sometimes your dialogue and ADR, or you might have an ADR editor. Also the effects editors, the Foley department as well. And then once all of those are compiled together, they will then be sent to the dubbing mixer at the end of that role. Now, if you're working freelance and you're working with people tends to be outside of Scotland, because the majority of drama is still being sort of post-production in London, a lot of people now working freelance. So there's a lot more kind of interconnected working online now that COVID happened. Everyone realized you could work remotely. So you'll find that you'll sometimes have what's called the supervising sound editor, who's basically been given the budget and has to is in charge of how all the sound is going to be approached for that in the time scale that's given. So they would be in charge of who the dubbing mixers would be, where these mixes would be taking place, so which facilities, because you will still need a facility for people to review in to hear the final picture, and also how many sound editors you have in various departments. A lot of the time we work, for instance, as sound designer, sound editor, you tend to work in parallel with other people. So you're constantly on the phone every day, doing two jobs at once, communicating with people. So you really need to be a good communicator. You do tend to go over hours and stuff as well. But yeah, it just depends what department you're in. And it's fun, but it's intense. And it's the same with high-end television, the sort of stuff that game shows and things that Jim and Hayley work on, or these sort of indie productions that you get. You tend to have people, a dubbing mixer would tend to do the edit and the dub, and you might be mixing 3 shows in one day. So it's quite intense as well. So yeah, it's a bit kind of flying by the seat of your pants a lot of the time, which if you're into that kind of way of working, then it can be exciting.
Nobody ever said it would be easy. And I think from Graham and Heather's immediate responses, it's a quite complicated world, a complicated world on location, with the challenge of recording clean dialogue in windy locations such as Shetland. And then the bigger the budget, the more people there are involved in post. And as Heather describes, that can be quite a lot of folk doing different specific jobs. Thank you very much for mentioning Jim and Hayley, who are who are coming to us from a very shiny floored entertainment world, where there can be many people involved in capturing and manipulating the sound that makes these programs so enjoyable. I'm going to ask Jim first to set the scene, to explain where he is and how far away Hayley is, and then Jim, could you tell us a little bit about your career, please, and then a little bit about the Kelvin Hall setup?
Yeah, sure. Well, I've been a sound supervisor for more years than I care to mention, and worked on lots of various shows, high-end LE shows, quiz shows, anything in the studio, and lots of events, both in the studio and in outside broadcasts. I just got to add that there's a wee parallel with the TV sound crew in a studio and an outside broadcast. They're sort of the same sort of structure. I'll come to that in a minute. They're sort of the same structure, but with a couple of changes because of the idiosyncrasies of OBs and of studios. But certainly, yeah, so I've been a sound supervisor for many years, done lots of various shows, from basic quiz shows up to LE shows and big events, including the Edinburgh Military Tattoo. So quite a range. In a studio like this is we're at Kelvin Hall, currently at Kelvin Hall in Glasgow. Belongs to Studio Works, and it's a high-end multi-camera production studio. It can do anything from a quiz show up to a big LE. The people who designed this studio designed it, and they're currently working in Strictly Come Dancing, so they have designed this studio with a lot of scope in mind to go from a simple quiz show with a couple of people chatting and some grams being played in, up to a full live band and presenters and all sorts of stuff. It's quite any television studio that you have is basically a blank canvas. It's a blank canvas, and you build it to make it. One day it can be a quiz show, the next day it can be an LE show, the next day it can be, you know, a cooking demonstration. Television studios are blank canvases where you have to build your own thing. So coming to the crewing in the studio, in the sound gallery here, at the front there, at the very front there, there's a Studer Vista X desk, and that would be the sound supervisor like myself, who gets involved in the show early on with the planning, who gets to talk to production and talk to production manager about budgets, and the director and the producer about the aspirations of the show and how they want to cover it. And Graham will have had these conversations as well with production teams about radio mics, because radio mics cost money, or equipment costs money. So you have to have those conversations with, you know, how we're going to cover things, what you as a sound supervisor want to do, and what the production can afford, and what the aspirations are for the final product, especially when it goes to dubbing and the rest of that. You try and make the dubbing mixer's job easier. So in the gallery here, we've got sound supervisor at the front. At that front desk there, and at the back here, we're still old-fashioned in television. We've got a position called Grams area, from the old days of gramophones. Now, I've never seen a gramophone or a record in a gallery for years now, but we still call it the gram op area. And the gram op is basically, we'll play in sound effects, look after the multi-track recording, because everything is multi-track nowadays, so that if the production team takes stuff away from the studio, they've got it back in their component parts. To recreate things, if they want to recreate something. I do a lot of comedy, and when you're doing a comedy panel show, there is no way you can constantly keep everyone faded up, so you have to sort of do it team by team. But comedy will always, somebody will try and out joke somebody else, and you'll miss lines, so the only way to get that is to multi-track it and pick it off later. It's a tricky one. So we multi-track. This studio has the ability to, it's got 3 MADI streams going into Reaper to record that number of tracks into Reaper, if you really want to, if you need it. So that's the gallery area in sound. There's sometimes a studio engineer who looks after the studio, look after communications, and this is where there's a slight parallel with outside broadcasts. That in a truck you have a sound supervisor. You might have a gram op. Trucks are quite small, so you're sort of limited. You certainly have a guarantee engineer, so you'll see things like sound guarantee, and a sound guarantee is specific to an outside broadcast, and they're looking after they know the truck, and they know how the truck's wired, so they know, they've got the local knowledge. And then the studio floor, there'll be sound assistants, depending on the show. There could be 1, 2, 3. I mean, the Tattoo had 9 sound assistants because it was quite a big show. So the studio floor, you would sometimes designate an SA1 on the studio floor. That's to be your eyes and ears. But once you get to know the crew, and crew are working in their own specific area of the studio floor, or you know, one person's looking after talent, one person's looking after the band, then you just tend to leave those members of the crew to look after and do their own thing. A new crew, if I had a new crew and I didn't know them, I would appoint an SA1, which is probably the most experienced person that I know on the crew, to sort of be my eyes and ears on the floor. And that's and then from there I'll hand across to Hayley, because she can explain lots more. There's stuff that goes on the studio floor that I don't know about and I don't want to know about it. They just make the magic happen.
Thank you, Jim.
I thought you didn't know about all the stuff that went on in the studio floor. Yeah, so on the studio floor we would look after all these sorts of things. So up here we've got the IEM, so that's for the talkback for presenters or talent to listen to what's happening in the gallery or programme sound. Just beneath that we've got a stage box, and that's what directly talks to Jim's desk up the stairs. So we're all responsible for setting up all this sort of stuff. As Jim said, the studio is a blank canvas, so sometimes it is, you know, a really simple setup. At the moment down at PQ, we've got a children's TV show that goes out live on a Saturday morning every week, and it's crazy. There's always something else that you're rigging every week. I also work, although I'm primarily based in studio, I also work in OBs as well. So quite a lot of time I'm outside doing, you know, football, rugby. I've done water polo before, you know, so there is a huge variety to a sound assistant in TV as well. Quite a lot of the time in studio, it's the innards are already, you know, wired, but then you're setting up all this sort of thing. For OBs, generally in the OB space, everything has to be set up because there's obviously no studio out there. So again, we're responsible for that. Once it's set up, getting it tested, and then babysitting it and hoping that there's no faults. And if there is faults, go and find the faults. So these are the kind of things that we have to do quite often in the rain, in the snow, in the cold, in the summer, in the winter. But yeah, it's a fun job to do. Studio shows, I think, as quite a lot of people have said, yeah, what you need to think about in the studio is like health and safety as well. A lot of people don't really think about that. So I could show you the studio's out of bounds just now because the lights are down. So these are the things that you need to think about when you're in the studio, working alongside other departments like the electricians, like the cameras, to make sure that things are in the right place so you're not in anybody else's way. Microphone placements as well on people who are coming into the studios. Sometimes it is presenters who are used to having people miking them. A lot of the time it's not. However, it's people who are coming onto the quiz show to be a contestant. They are not used to it, so you really need to be you need to be mindful of that as well, because you're in people's personal spaces a lot. As a sound assistant, you're up people's clothes, you're down people's clothes, you're in people's backs. So you really need to be mindful of that when you're doing it. The other thing that's really important in our job that I certainly didn't realise before I came into the job is communications. Now, by communications, what I mean is talk back to different departments. So we are responsible for helping set up, you know, radio talkbacks so that everybody can talk to each other, so that the gallery can hear the cameras can hear the gallery, the lighting can hear the gallery, so everybody knows what's happening at any particular point in time. What else I do?
We can come back, and
Sure.
I think we've kind of rattled round a number of real important areas. The sort of single camera drama production, recording on location that Graham talked about, the post-production process that follows thereafter that Heather described, and then the studio and outside broadcasts that Jim and Hayley described so well as well. PQ, for those who don't know, is Pacific Key, where the BBC is based in Glasgow. IEM, if I remember rightly, is in-ear monitoring, which allows the presenters to hear the talk back from the studio gallery. ADR's automatic dialogue replacement, if that's exactly the right words. That's the way that dialogue, which can't be recorded cleanly on location, is recorded in post-production and then edited in. And LE is light entertainment. I think not all entertainment is light, and LE, sometimes my students don't know what LE is. So I thought it'd be helpful, given the purpose of today's session, to break down some of these acronyms. So that, I think listening to that, there's enough. It's complicated. It's a complicated world where an awful lot goes on that people don't often think about, because they can imagine cameras and directors, but they tend not to think of all the work that goes to capture clean sound and how important that is. So thank you very much, everybody. Our audience today are really interested in how to get into it. So I know, Graham, you studied an HND a few years ago now. Would you kind of explain how you managed to go from a recently graduated student to enjoying the work that you do just now?
So after I finished my HND, I had about a year of not really knowing what to do or how to get into the industry. That was one thing we didn't cover in college when I was sitting there. So these are certainly in a better position than I am, because this type of thing didn't exist, because the internet was barely a thing. Anyway, after that, there was a government organisation called Scottish Screen, who are now amalgamated into Creative Scotland, but they ran the only sort of industry-led traineeship programme, and I had saw an advert for it in the Glasgow Herald. I thought, that's the sort of thing I want to do, and I applied for it, and I got through to interview stage, and that all went very well, and then I didn't get it, which was a bit of a disaster in my mind. But it came down to myself and one other person. The other person got the role, but Scottish Screen traineeship very kindly, when their trainee was out on jobs, would offer my name up to productions as a possible trainee for their job. And through that, in my first year, I didn't really do trainee jobs as such, but I did do lots and lots of short films, and I ended up doing lots of short films, some for very little money or no money, as was kind of legal at the time, but not really anymore. And that's how I got into the industry. And then after about I think I had been doing the job almost a year, I got my first trainee role on a proper kind of big high-end TV drama, which was Tinseltown 2, and that worked out very well for me because I got great training on it, learned a lot, and I kind of got the ideal situation where the boom operator, first assistant sound in that, then moved to Brighton, and the sound mixer who I'd been working with and who I'd got on well with, then on his next drama asked me if I would be the boom operator, because I picked it up quite quickly, and from there on in, that was it. I was boom operating. So although I only had one trainee role, it was really quite a full-on job, and the departments back then were much smaller. It was myself, it was a mixer, the boom operator, and then myself. So I got a lot of hands-on experience. We didn't do as many radio mics back then because we didn't have multi-tracking abilities in the early 2000s. So it was quite a different department, and that's how I got into it. I waffled a bit.
No, I think starting that story with a newspaper advert kind of sets the scene to say, I can't believe it was that long ago. Thank you very much. Hayley, how did you get into the line of work you're in just now?
Um,
Thanks, Pirie.
Sound's always something that I've been very interested in. When I left school, I did a TV production course, and it was the sound part that I was interested in. But being young and immature that I was, I didn't pursue it at the time. I ended up going off and doing other things, worked abroad for a year. When I came back, I decided to go and get a degree in sound. So I went to the SAE Institute in Glasgow and got my degree there. When I came out, it was about another year before I managed to get a job in TV, and I started off as a runner. So that's how I came in, as at very low level, nothing to do with sound, you know, making teas and coffees, going and getting bits and bobs for things. But in doing that, it meant that my face was in the building. I used to bring Jimmy's cups of tea, and it just so happened that about 6 months after I started running, there was a general election called, and we need more people. And because I'd been in and saw Jim and brought me his tea and shown an interest in sound, then thankfully he flagged my name to the BBC Scotland team down there, and that's how I got in. So for about a year or so after that, I was mostly running, but getting the odd chance in sound. They were bringing me out to football games. I was getting to shadow news shifts, and then about a year and a half after, about a year and a half after I started running, I was able to stop running and just do sound full time, because I'd managed to get all this experience. And to be honest, I'm glad that that's the way that I did go in, because it gave me a good foundation of how TV works. You know, who's who, which department does which, when to talk, when not to talk, studio etiquette, all the kind of really important things that's probably not touched on that often, particularly in colleges and uni. It certainly wasn't in the uni that I went to. It was mostly music based, to be honest, with a very short module on TV. So these are all the things that were really important to start off with, and that meant when I moved into the sound department, I already had that knowledge, and I already had that base of how to behave in the studio and how things worked, and that's how I get in.
Thank you very much. I think it's really interesting to think about how television sound is part of a much wider world of sound training, and so much of that training is focused in music. But the television world is a special one which needs specific skills. Thanks, Hayley. Heather, I know you've done radio and theatre as well. Would you like to tell us a little about how you got to where you are just now?
So I'm 38 now, and I've been working in sound since I was 14. So that was back in the 90s, when there used to be a lot of music studios about. And I was a bit of a geek at the time, playing about with software and stuff. And I'm going to be a bit controversial, because back when I was younger, there was maybe 2 or 3 courses that were college courses. There was no university courses at the time. And I kind of feel like there's a lot of courses now, and I think they're good, because I think the culture's changed in general, because a lot more people are going to university than there was, way back 25 years ago. And I think it's important. It helps people come out of school, and it helps them kind of think about what they maybe want to do. But I would say, for me, the biggest changes that have happened with my career have been individuals who have been at a more senior level, who I've interacted with either through a job or a course. So when I did a little course at James Watt, HND, when I was I think I was 19, 20. And we actually had lecturers who came in who worked in the industry, and they would come in and work 2 days a week or something. And that's how I got picked up. And a couple other people got picked up as well, because they could see who they believed could work in the industry and take them on as a sort of apprentice, which I think is something that we're lacking right now. And maybe that's the connection that we're needing at the moment, is that you know, the courses are great. It's a great way of people getting hands-on a little bit, but actually to learn more about the industry and what roles you can even get to as well, you kind of need to learn off the people that have been doing it for quite a while and who can shield you a little bit before you go into that. Because I have to say, if you're freelance, you are jumping from job to job, and you need to be careful with yourself and how you condone yourself, because you know, if people think you're going to be good or they really like you, they'll keep giving you work. If you're sitting there on your phone and not listening to somebody, they're going to just cancel you, because there's so many people coming into the industry now. And, you know, there's so many people that they can pick from now that they never used to have. And there's not as many traineeships as well, which I think we need more of. I was very lucky that, as I said, I got picked up, worked in music studios. As Hayley said, best way to do any of this is to work as a runner. Post-production or production. I mean, I was working in BBC at the time across the board, and I remember Hayley coming in and working on something, and I remember saying to someone else, she's got it, because you can just tell who's got it and who's not. And that's how, you know, it's the impressions that you give. It's the not, oh, I want to work in this because it looks cool, because half the time you're deep down grubbiness in whatever department you're working. It's tough. It's great when you're part of a really good team, but it does take a while. And, you know, there's been times where I've nearly dropped off and gone, oh, I can't do this anymore. You know, particularly in Scotland, you know, work can go in peaks and troughs. And that's the other thing, is that the industry does that. There's been a bit of a bad year this year, but I'm sure next year, you know, it'll go back. And we've seen that happen with the economy as well. But the one good thing about Scotland is that everybody kind of knows each other. And if you get into that sort of group, as Graham said, the best thing I would say if you're getting into production sound is to do short films. And that's with your friends. That's, if you're at uni, do your short films. That's how people see your stuff. If it goes into festivals, people go, oh, they did a really good job. Then you're building a show reel as well, because people can see what you've done. So I could go on about it for a heck of a long time and write a whole book about it. But yeah.
I think you'll get your chance again, because we're going to open up to questions shortly, and I can see a couple of questions coming in the chat, and I think that's really useful. Just coming back to a couple of the points made, resilience and patience, I think, is important, because both Graham and Hayley talked about how much time it took to get into it, and Graham started by describing his initial rejection, which clearly he didn't get him down, because he came back afterwards. And I think, Heather, your points about how you perform when you get that opportunity to contribute to production is really, really important. Before we come to questions, I just want to ask Jim, like you said yourself, you've been in this business for a while. What do you think the key qualities are that people need to succeed in the sound department, if that's not too broad a question?
Well, that's the golden. That's the holy
With
grail, isn't it?
Right.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, I think the biggest thing is attitude. You've got to have the right attitude, and as both Heather and Hayley have said, that it's when you get a chance to shine, take the chance to shine. You know, if someone's giving you a chance and seeing that you've got the capability and the right attitude, you may not have the skill set yet, but you've got the right attitude and a passion for sound, then if someone gives you the chance, then take that chance and use that as a chance to shine. I'll give you an example. I was doing a broadcast many years ago, and there were some students involved, and one student who was involved just worked their socks off and just did a brilliant job. And that student is now freelance in the industry, and because some of my crew said, that person has to be picked up and given the chance, because they were shining. They showed the attitude and the mindset, and it's also, like Heather said as well and alluded to, go out and get your hands dirty. go and get as many air miles as possible. I'm mixing up all my metaphors here, but I'm going for it. Go and get your hands dirty and do and do as much as you can. As an employer, somebody's looking at you and say, what experience have you got? And if you can say, I've done this, live streaming from a studio broadcast point of view, have you done live streaming? Well, that's good, because you understand, studio, you understand cameras and talkbacks and stuff like that. And it's true what Hayley said. A big part of this job is talkback. A big part of this sound gallery here is talkback and comms. And a lot of my planning around, certainly when I do an election, probably 90% of the election planning is communications. But why? Because communications is a sound thing, and it happens in the sound department. So it's also that there are lots of different skill sets needed in sound. So the chance to shine and build up your toolkit, build up your, build up what you understand in sound. Fault finding, can you fault find? Understand balanced, unbalanced, all the rest of it. Do your Dante certification. Do as much as you can to add to your toolkit. I think that's the best thing I'd say for getting into the industry at the moment. I think I've scared James off.
Hi, everybody. I think we've slightly lost James there. So just carrying on, I mean, I've got a question. What's the best piece of advice you've actually had during your career, and what's the worst? Who wants to start off on that one? Jim, do you want to start off in terms of what's the best piece of advice you've had?
Okay, I mean, I think the best piece of advice is remember that every day is a school day. And I know it's a cliche, but this industry has changed so much. I was just bemoaning the fact today that sound engineering now is becoming, there's a grey area with IT where we're using Dante networks, so every day is a school day, and every day you have to be constantly learning. Don't think that once you're a sound supervisor, once you're a gram op, once you're a sound assistant, that's you finished. You will be like, I'm still learning. Every day I still learn stuff. So that piece of advice I was given was, remember, you will have to keep an open mind and keep learning. That was the best piece of advice I've ever been given. I've been given lots of bad advice. I don't know where to start, so I'm going to miss that one.
We're not best to repeat. Okay, moving on to Heather.
Trying to see in the sunlight. Best piece of advice. I would say, as Jim was saying, just keep going. Because I've been grounded for so, I'm gonna throw the gender thing in the bowl now as well. The worst piece of advice was when I was at college, in that particular college, and one of my lecturers said that there was only one reason why there was women in the studio, which I won't go into. But yeah, you can sometimes get some of that chat. I'm sure Hayley's dealt with that a little bit as well. So the best piece of advice in that regard has been, I think all of us who have been women working together, we've always tried to help each other out quite a bit, and things are getting better, I would say, but yeah, there can be that sort of chat happening now and then. Best piece of advice, as I said, is keep going. And I think, as I said, the more senior people who are working on a senior position, who've been doing this for years, are the best people to speak to, because they've gone through it all. They've seen, as I said, they've seen the industry peak and, the flow of it. It's like riding a ship a lot of the time. There's a storm coming and everyone's sort of connected together. So they have witnessed it, they have seen it. And I guess the freelancing side of things, I saw someone else who put a question about that, and that's really important. And in terms of rates, in terms of how to look after your finances, I would say at the beginning, you know, you're sort of still finding your way. But I would say getting a little bit of business advice from an accountant or someone who works in that area is always a good start as well, because I think as Hayley probably knows as well, even during COVID, there's been a couple of times we've been caught out and you know, money and stuff like that, because it's quite a complicated world as well, which you don't really think about when you're doing your job. You know, saving away and making sure that you invest in your equipment as well. So I would say that's a big thing as well, is the advice that I've been given about setting up shop and what I need to get and for each job. So yeah.
And Hayley, what about yourself? Thank you.
I think just to reiterate what everybody else has said, I think the best is to, you know, to ask questions. You're not the finished article when you walk out of college or uni, and no one's really expecting it. The worst thing you could do is to come into a studio and pretend that you do know everything, because then if something goes wrong, then you know you've made a fool of yourself, and your next job's only as good as your last. You know, this job's really based on your reputation, particularly when you're freelance, because you know there's no permanent job for you. You are having to go, and you know people are contacting you, and they're only contacting you if they know that you're good. They're not contacting you if you know so you can make mistakes. What I'm not saying that you can't make mistakes. Of course, go and make mistakes, but don't pretend that you know that how everything works if you don't. I would say that's probably the best bit of the advice, is to ask questions, and also just remember that your career is going to be built on your reputation.
No, that's really good advice. Thanks, Hayley. And Graham, coming to you, final question.
Yeah, Hayley's right. Yeah, it's always good to ask questions. There's no stupid questions. If I am using a new bit of equipment, I often speak to other sound mixers who have used it before, so I can get, you know, I'm still asking questions, like Jim says, every day's a school day. It's also good to ask people in other departments about new things they're using, because, you know, you've got to work with them. My most important piece of advice, I would say, that I don't know if it's been given to me, but certainly I think the most important thing is just being a good person. And what gets you repeat work is A, doing your job well, and B, being a good person to other people and understanding what other people are going through during their days, because they've got things going on that you may not understand, and it might be being short with you, but just try and be a good person. Good people get work, I think. So
That's great.
And I can only get the worst advice I was ever given was with my careers advice, when she said I should be a joiner. I had no interest in being a joiner. I wanted to be a music producer. I wanted to be a rock star. I wasn't that either, but there you go.
Thanks, Graham. And Heather, in terms of how do you manage and juggle different projects? Because obviously, you know, you work as a sound designer and a sound mixer, and I just think, you know, it would be interesting to hear about the different levels and roles of projects that you work on.
This is interesting. I've got a lovely big whiteboard in my house, in my studio, and it's like what I was saying about freelancing. I think it's good to sort of learn how to budget and what jobs you're taking on and how you pipeline that as well, and who you're working with, you know what, like particularly with post-production stuff, I might be working on 2 or 3 projects at the same time. And sometimes it's been a year of what they call time sliding. So things have come in late a lot of the time. Some of that's been to do with the strike. Some of it's just in general, it's the way things go. So for instance, if you do that and you're taking on one job and that slides to 2 months, you have to think about that's 2 months before you get work or start on that job. And then that's going to maybe be another month, 2 months that you're going to get paid. So that's 4 months without being paid. So you need to think, okay, that's how I suppose I've kind of survived in Scotland, is that, you know, someone might phone up and say, could you do a sound recordist job today? Could you go and work on this ad? Or we need, you know, a spare hands in football, or for instance, podcasts. That's something, if people want to get into post-production, I would say is podcasts seem to be a big thing at the moment. They kind of a really good entry level, getting used to that sort of work. I noticed someone mentioned something, because I'm just keeping an eye on the questions. Someone mentioned about equipment. So I would say is when you have to start thinking about what role you want to get into, and keeping an eye on eBay and Reverb all the time. I would say don't buy new stuff. If you can buy secondhand stuff, there's always people selling gear all the time. And even buying for post-production, you definitely need Pro Tools. Learn that. It's like what Jim said, there's courses out there, just do the courses. There's tons of stuff on YouTube now that I wish we had. But yeah, in terms of balancing projects, it is quite a skill to sort of achieve, but you can do it. And it's like what I said with the financial situation as well. You have to do that sometimes, but obviously don't burn yourself out and don't take on too much at the same time.
Well, I think when we move on to questions now, actually, because we've got quite a few of them in the chats at the moment. I see that Margaret, you've answered a few, I think, wanting to answer. So I'll start with the very first one, and I'm sorry if I pronounce the names wrong. I do apologise, but Ahmad Murad has a question, and this is open to anybody, I believe. How do you see the future of media television? How do you evaluate the great speed of social media today? So that's quite a broad question. Who wants to answer that?
I'll grab it. I'll do it. I can't answer it because who knows what will be around in 10 years' time, 15 years' time. Who knows? Things are moving so fast. But I do know that there will be a need and a desire. There's all this mention of AI taking over jobs and stuff. And AI does have a place in some parts of sound as an assistant to assist people with real ears, but not to take over the jobs. And there will still be within the craft of sound the requirement for people to mix, to put on microphones, to mic up orchestras, to do the craft skills that are needed. So I would like to hope with live streaming and the access to kit's cheaper now. I mean, you can do it a 3-camera live stream. I mean, years ago, a 3-camera live stream, if you want to call it a live broadcast, would have cost a fortune. Now it's within the budget of lots of people. So I would like to hope there is more work to be had on live streaming and stuff, and more. But the live streaming thing at the moment, I come from a sound perspective, is that people don't tend to think about the sound. We'll live stream cameras, but take a feed off the PA, or we'll just put a microphone at the back of the room. And then they'll forget about communications. How does the director talk to cameras and stuff like that? So I think live streaming is still going through a growing up phase. It's still to evolve to become something. I mean, live streaming is scalable. Live stream can be your phone to the world, or it can be 5 or 6 cameras through a vision mixer to the world, and a complicated sound setup. Everything's changing, which is exciting. I think it's great, as long as sound are brought along and taken along that journey. But I think it's really, there'll always be the need for the craft skills and sound and communications to take, be it social media, be it live streaming, be it linear broadcasts, or high-end studio television, multi-camera studios like this. People are still watching things like Strictly Come Dancing. People are still watching live event TV. So there will always be the place for that craft skills. And yeah, to get into that craft skills, you have to be good and you have to be committed. But I think it's an exciting time.
Thank you, Jim. And another question, this is from an anonymous attendee. Where is the best place to post short films so that people can see?
I can maybe help out with that. Depends. Like you want to make sure that you look after it, but I would just be trying to send it to as many film festivals as you can. There's lots of local ones now. There's just Paisley's one this week as well. The other place I would suggest is speaking to GMAC. if you're in Glasgow. They've got equipment that you can hire, but they also do something called Cafe Flickr that's been going on for a very long time. And a lot of people have been really successful. They'll have a community meet up. I think it's one Thursday of every month. And they actually have a little cinema space there as well, so you can share your films with other filmmakers. And the same goes for meeting people, is to go to the film festivals if you can, just mingle with people a little bit. It's where people are going to hear it. So whether you're a sound recordist or doing post-production, that's where they're going to hear it. There's also 48-hour film project that quite a few people get involved in as well. And also just online, that as someone was pointing out about the online industry and stuff, there's a lot of kind of if you go on Film Freeway, you tend to have to pay for film festivals, but some of them can be quite cheap, and some of them you can even submit to for free. They do a lot of discounts and stuff, so if you're wanting to get it out out there, I know people have been successful on YouTube. I'm a bit of a weird one. I've actually started making films in the last few years, and I was picked by GMAC for little pictures, so I've just literally finished filming at the weekend. So as I said, GMAC are a really good place to start. I think quite a few people have been successful there, so if you are in Glasgow, or there's other places I know that people go to across the world, across the UK, get in with the scene, so to speak. That's how you see people kind of lifting up. It's how people who want to be in producers or directors as well, you get to sort of grow with them, and they come out of the universities, and you tend to find that everybody kind of knows each other that way. So that's my advice, really.
Thank you for that, Heather. We've got another question. I think you've answered this a little bit, Heather, already, but what are the challenges of working as a freelancer? And that's from Matthew Dunn.
Being a freelancer is very rewarding. You get to work with lots of people, and you get to, within television, we're pretty privileged at where we go and the people we meet, and we do some seriously cool things, but sometimes you're left without work, and there's no shame in taking other jobs when you're doing it. When I was as a boom operator, I used to take on, I'm a keen cyclist, so I worked as a bike mechanic in between times just to keep money coming in. I know people do delivery jobs and things like that, and there's no shame and there's no stigma around that. Sometimes you need to take on something extra just to pay bills, and that's fine. And you'll know when you get your next job come up, you get time to hand in your notice. You go, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to go because I've got a 3-month job coming up. And eventually, as things go on, the more you're established in the industry, the less you have to do things like that. But certainly, when I was establishing myself in the industry, for my first 6 months or first 9 months of working the film industry, I worked in McDonald's, and I was a very strict vegetarian who was working in McDonald's and working in the film industry. But that's how I paid my bills, and that's how I get through. And that's what you just have to do. And then as you get more established, you save and you learn to save, and it's good to have savings, and you can absorb the quiet times, and that's just how you have to play it. When you're making money, don't spend it. That's probably the best bit of advice. When you're making money, don't spend it all.
There's a question. Thank you very much for that, Graham. There's a question from Ian. Where is the best place to start networking to these freelance and production groups?
There's quite a lot of groups on Facebook, actually. That's where quite a lot of adverts are for jobs, certain jobs. There's certain groups for sound, there's groups for runners, there's groups for any part of the sound or any part of the TV industry as well. And they're, as I say, jobs are posted on there, so that's probably the best place to start for networking. There's obviously also the kind of LinkedIn and all that kind of stuff as well. Look out for stuff like this as well, like industry events and things like that. Those are things that are good to get to. And as Heather said, if you've got a show deal or anything like that, it's good to have that on hand, that you can give that to people as well if you are meeting people face to face.
Great, thank you.
I think also, Heather was talking earlier on about Glasgow Media Access Centre. There must be those all up and down the country, and I think that is a good place to meet like-minded people. And they quite often, Media Access Centres run good courses as well, where you'll meet other like-minded people. So I think those are good places to start. Look in your local community for those.
Can I just also pop in here just to say that the networking thing is really important. There are lots of things that, as it's already been alluded to, the industry in Scotland is quite small. We all know each other. We all know each other in sound in Scotland, and any chance to network, a networking event, grab it with both hands and go and meet people. That's how you'll get that's how you get your next job, by going to network and meet people and say, and they'll get, well, they'll give this person a try. And that also applies to training. There are lots of training courses online, and there are lots of people online who are willing to help and willing to give advice and encourage the next generations of people coming on and encourage the industry. Go and grab it. It's all there. Just have a look about, you know, as Graham said, he looked in the paper and he looked and saw his chance. Look about, see what's happening around about you. Don't expect it to come to you on your phone and social media. Go and look at places, go and look at all the places in Scotland that are offering courses, that are offering networking events, and go and grab them, because these courses should be jammed full of people who want to get on in the industry. And they are. The people who go to these courses are the people that want to get on in the industry. You can tell, because if you're seeing the same faces, you realise that person is really keen and is serious about joining the industry.
Thanks for that, Jim. Another question from Ahmed. This is for you, James. Based on your media and teaching experience, what is your advice to newly graduated students?
I'm not going to disagree with the advice already offered. I think networking is really, really important. You've got to meet people, and I think, having worked with the RTS in Scotland in the past, I would encourage students to join the RTS. Naturally, it's a ScreenSkills Select college. I would encourage students to be connected to ScreenSkills and picking up in the training there. And I think, just trying to meet people and share that enthusiasm. Like many of the panel, I've been really enthusiastic about sound since I was a teenager, and that enthusiasm really counts. I think Jim also runs a training course in the springtime, which is specifically to help people to get onto sound, to get work as freelance sound assistants. And there are opportunities, there is work, and it's just about, making the most of the opportunities and building upon the training that you've got, the skills you've developed in college, and doing the kind of work that Heather's talked about, making as much content as you can, sharing it with as many people as you can, and meeting as many people as you can, which is becoming easier, thankfully. I'm really sorry about my dodgy internet, by the way. I'm glad to be back. I'm sorry I had to jump out and come back in.
I'm glad to have you back, James. We've got another question from Matthew Dunn. I think we sort of touched on this a little bit earlier, but when starting out, what sound equipment should you invest in? So that's a really good question from Matthew.
I would say investing in equipment is a difficult one, and knowing buying, it's good to start hiring. If you're recording short films, I think it's good to hire it first, because buying can be an expensive thing to do, and then you've got a piece of kit, you've not got use for it again. So hiring is not a bad thing. It's not a bad way to start out. A good thing to do is buy yourself a decent set of cans, a decent set of clothes. If you're working on location, decent set of closed back cans. Because if you're hiring different kit and different given rights, if you get a set of cans that well, that's going to kind of stand you in good stead. But as for investing in kit, it's good to wait until you've got work coming up that you can then offset the cost of that, because kit's expensive and also needs maintenance and needs replaced, and kit's a difficult one and can be extraordinarily expensive. When I was taking my first kind of big leap, I'd been recording for a number of years, and was taking my first leap into buying a full drama kit. I'd been doing a hybrid of buying kit and renting kit, and then when Waterloo Road came along and it had 4 solid months of work and a rental of the kit. I made like a big investment that was, I had to speak to my wife about the fact I was going to use all our savings to buy a buck ton of kit. So it's like, it can be daunting and scary. It will eventually pay for itself. But when you're starting out, I'll say the thing to do is buy cans and rent until your work's building up. And then you'll get to find out what you need and what you don't need. And if you're an assistant, one of the Katera pocket things that you put over straps the sound assistants wear, I wish I could remember the proper name of them, and like a Swiss tool or a Leatherman can be a handy thing. But cans, good starting place.
Thank you, Graham. This isn't a question from an anonymous attendee. Interesting question. Why have the majority of you, in terms of speakers, decided to go freelance if there is uncertainty surrounding having work? I'm presuming working with a production team is more reliable. So what's the reasoning behind your choices?
Answer that one. When I started out in industry, in drama, there's no staff jobs. They just don't exist. The drama world is freelance. Everyone's freelance. You may get some producers and line producers who are attached to a production company, but from a technical point of view, I don't think there's any staff jobs anywhere. You may get a staff job in a rental house, and they may send you out on some jobs from a sound point of view. But in general, there's no staff jobs, and that's why I have these freelance, not many staff jobs anyway.
Okay, thank you, Graham. And then another question from Matthew. Thank you for keeping the questions going, Matthew, as well. What time of the year in TV industry is Scotland usually booming? All for the year?
I wouldn't say there's one particular time of year. It used to be, I think, the usual sort of Christmas, January was really, really quiet, and then obviously it picks up in the summer. Over the last few years, particularly after COVID, it's been a lot of peaks and troughs in the industry. There was a big peak kind of last year. The year before, everybody was working quite a lot, and then this year we've seen the trough, which no one's working. Well, very few people are working, and we're expected to get quieter as it goes on. So yeah, I can't even remember what the question was.
Time of the year is booming in.
Oh yeah, what time of year it booms? Yeah, so there's not really a specific time of year where it booms. The summer is normally busier, but it is quieter normally in the winter and at Christmas. And just to back up on what people were saying before freelancing, I don't think I could go back into a staff job now. Now that I've been freelancing for so long, you just get used to it. You get used to not working. You get used to picking your own hours. You get used to budgeting eventually. But I don't think I could go back into staff jobs. And as Graham quite rightly said, there's very, very few staff jobs anywhere about in Scotland.
Thank you very much for that, Hayley. So we've come through all of our questions. I'm going to hand back to James to say the final words and obviously thank all the speakers. And it's great that there's, I think, 2 classes from City of Glasgow College watching as well. So hello to City of Glasgow College as well. So handing back to you, James, just to for the final words and to thank all of our contributors.
I'm just glad to be back, to be honest. I was felt cruelly locked out. I noticed Heather's hand was up. I just wondered whether you had a final point to make at the end there, Heather.
Yeah, I'm gonna say I was freelance for about 15 years, and then I took a staff job during lockdown, and then I've gone back freelance. So something I'm going to make a point of. I don't know if people have seen the Screen Scotland Working Differently film, which I'm in, and I also helped with the research of that. So something I want to say to people is the industry can be really good for those who do have disabilities. And something I've got epilepsy basically, so I've got to be really careful about how much work I take on and stress levels and things. And I found being in a full-time job, because I didn't have control over that, it actually affected my health a little bit. So that was kind of one of the reasons why I had to go freelance again. And my health got better and everything's, you know, a little bit easier for me now. But that's something I want to put a point across, is that, you know, for those who maybe have a disability, this industry can be really quite good for you, and freelancing as well could be quite good for you in that respect as well. You know, as Hayley and both Graham have both said as well, that, you know, we've had to do jobs on the side, and there's nothing wrong with that. That happens a lot. COVID, oh my goodness, a lot of us lost all our work and we had to go and do jobs all over the place, you know. Another thing is that, you know, we all help each other out in terms of work. We pass work on to each other. We can't all do the same work at the same time. And this year, there's been issues because of commissioning programs and things, but then you end up with a big swell of work as well. So again, it's kind of just, it takes a kind of 5-year kind of section where you start learning the peaks and troughs of where we are and how things are going. But that's something I want to stress, that this industry, you know, don't be afraid about health and things like that, because there's always a role for you somewhere.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'd recommend that film as well. If anybody hasn't seen it, I'm sure you can get it from the Screen Scotland website. It's really fascinating. One of our ex-students is involved as well. And it's a really interesting watch. I'd like to thank Victoria and ScreenSkills guys for setting up such an interesting panel. Heather, thank you very much. Graham, I'd love to talk to you. I wonder whether one of the challenges in an FEs or in a college sector is teaching people how to boom, which is really hard. Have you got any short words of encouragement for somebody who's handed a boom for the first time when it begins to hurt?
Yeah. It's difficult, and people don't expect it to be so difficult because it's not like lifting weights or anything, because the leverage from them out. But engage your core, protect your back. These are the two things that you need to do.
Engage your core and protect your back. That's good advice. Thank you very much. Hayley, thank you so much for your contribution. I don't know whether you've got a final point you'd like to make.
No, just thank you for having me, and good luck. Everyone's given you good advice to get into the industry. The chances are there if you look for them, and when you do get them, grab them with both hands.
Thank you very much. And I've had the good fortune to work with Jim over the years, and Jim, thank you very much for your contribution this afternoon. Is there anything you'd like to, any final words you'd like to say before I say thank you very much to everybody and bring us all to a close?
No, just it's all been said that the panel have said. Oh, there's some very wise advice in the panel that, and years of experience. So yeah, take the advice in the panel. When the chance is there, get out and grab those chances. Grab that training. The question about freelance, yeah, freelance and staff you'll be looked after. As someone who was staff and my training was sort of looked after. When you're freelance, you're in charge of your own training. You have to look after your own skill set. So you are your brand. So go out and get it. And if I say anything to people coming in to the industry is, yeah, put away your mobile phone when you're working, please.
Thank you very much. Pay attention to what's going on around you with your ears as well as your eyes. I think we're at 14:30, which is the point at which this session is finished. So thank you very much, everybody, for the contribution this afternoon. Thank you.